Hi, time for another episode of The Thought Project, just so you know, and this is episode 4 of August 2023, and today we're going to be starting out with the old song by AC/DC called T&T. For the beginning of this, just because I gotta keep the show moving today. So it is Friday in the U.S. for those of you watching from abroad, because I know I have followers that are not just in the U.S. Australia and India are big fans. But it's Friday afternoon here in the U.S., so I'm gonna try to keep this really short as much as possible because I got a feeling that that 20-minute limit just people just start dropping, and some of the show is structured that way because some of the content is so important. If you join for the dancing at the beginning or the singing at the end, that's great. The heavier topics in the middle, it's really not for everybody. I say as I scratch my nose, it's just not. So you may even find you're just like allergic to some of it. So, whatever part you want to join for is great. But we're going to start today with something that is actually really, really important to the economic issues in the U.S., which is that the U.S. government announced on Thursday this week that they are rolling out a large plan to hold people accountable for real estate schemes. Now, what does this tie into nationally that keeps becoming an issue and is an issue over and over again that we've been discussing here on the show? Donald Trump worked in real estate, so there's all of these supposed affairs and legal issues around him. Russia, the Russian schemes. Notably, Kendrick was really big on real estate and insurance fraud schemes, especially burning down homes and collecting insurance. Cersei and Wilhelm repeatedly burned down homes and collected insurance, so false insurance schemes. That's the kind of stuff they're talking about, yeah. So I want to say all that because I don't want anybody to be going, oh, we weren't born, we're Russian oligarchs, we're so important, or we're KGB, we're so important, it can't be happening. No, it can totally be happening. It's long overdue. Anyway, so, you know, and of course, it's fun for me to make fun of it all, but what else am I going to do? Like, I spent years dealing with this stuff when I was in the DC area. People are just crazy and weird. Like, I had a person pretending to be a therapist. It was actually Buffalo Bill who was harassing and attacking me and would say stupid things like, do you like vampires? And I'd say, yeah, because I like vampire stories. And he'd bite me. He was a crazy lunatic that murdered a whole bunch of women. I was stuck talking to him for years. But yeah, he was totally in on real estate schemes too. Yep, another weird whack job Russian with weird real estate schemes. I don't know, honey. It just, you know, sometimes I just think there's nothing else to really do except make Asian slow with all of it because the whole thing is just too crazy. But anyways, that was just to try to give you an example to kind of, instead of me just sitting here talking, to try to give you something to visualize the issue. But it's notable that Meghan Kelly did a show this week with on Hunter Biden with Congressman Wesley Hunt, who's a very respectable guy. I don't know how long he's been in Congress. I'm not even going to go into it. You can look all that up. But she didn't source it out, and I didn't source out her story. She said she had 2 or 3 different sources on this. But apparently, Hunter Biden set up a dinner for Michelle Obama and Barack Obama in Cafe Milano, which is around Georgetown University in the Georgetown area of D.C. It's a very well-known restaurant. I actually ate there once myself back in my early 20s. And it's supposed to be Italian food, but it's really Sicilian. The food actually isn't that amazing. It's a lot of pasta and red sauces. But for people that are involved in Russian mafia and their crime, it's one of their big restaurants. I didn't know that, so I just went there once in my 20s. I know later a bunch of people would try to Russia and Iran, try to say, oh, you ate there once. That means you're part of it. No, honey, everyone in the DC area has pretty much eaten there once. The fact that you all want to go there and ruin it for everyone else is your problem. It's actually the problem that we all have with you. So stop taking everything that's fun or good and ruining it, because that's what they do wherever they go. But it's important to note that it was at Cafe Milano. And a lot of it's because it's very dark. It has a lot of quiet spots. And most restaurants really wouldn't precipitate business of that kind. So the fact that Hunter actually set it up and then it's not really being noted, like Meghan Kelly said, she talked about the fact she was doing the show and she even had a congressman on, and the need for multiple sources was just kind of moot at that point because the work had been done. She's got a congressman to certify the story. So I think nothing's going to happen. But then I saw today that there is actually some legislative, there's some legal proceedings that have now been precipitated by her doing that interview. And so it's not an accident. Here's the thing about Hunter Biden. And by that I mean it's not an accident there's been legal proceedings as a result. I have no idea what kind of legislation is going to come out of all this because the whole thing is so big and weird and just labyrinthian. It's crazy. But what I need to note is that, let's go back to an earlier story I discussed, which is that Hunter Biden is this bizarre son who doesn't really make a lot of sense. Is a drug addict, sex addict, and apparently overly involved with Russian mafia. And there's a larger issue that, President Biden had a good son, a quote-unquote good son, who died at war in the Middle East. And it was always suspicious that the son died, and then, Beau died. And then Hunter ended up playing this huge pivotal role in President Biden, Joe Biden's life during the years he was a senator. And it's just extremely suspicious because how does Hunter Biden then, the good son dies, and Hunter Biden, who nobody really has a good history on, nobody's want to come forward and say they've known him his whole life, appears on the scene with his dad, quote unquote dad. And I'm looking at the guy and I'm thinking, this dude doesn't look like the Bidens. Not that much. And, so what, he's just some weirdo that showed up to take advantage of the family and he's tied to the Russian mafia, or worse, or he's being forced on them? It's just really weird because President Biden definitely has dementia. And that's probably been developing for a couple of decades. Never mind the weird stuff with putting his hands on people. Like, I can't even go there. But I say all this because when I worked in home health, and I've seen this in my own life personally, there was one I took care of who had worked at the State Department. Really nice lady. And she was dark skinned. She was considered African American, really sweet. Did not look like a woman who was coming to visit her. And we noted this at the company. We said, this is not her daughter. She had a woman who was pretending to be a daughter showing up at the home. And we had to do reports on her. And she was more petite than the woman I took care of. She was much darker. And as far as we know, was tied in with the Russian mafia. And this woman had worked at the State Department. So she literally had this weird parasitic person pretending to be her daughter, who actually looked nothing like her, and people were letting it pass in the DC area because they were supposed to all just be black. Huh? No. This woman was obviously not related to her, and she was really abusive and mean. And it was one of the strangest, hardest parts of the job, and it was especially difficult because there were some really creepy, weird people that would show up there occasionally. And they were extremely rude to the rest of us who took care of her. And just really snotty about coming in to see her. And it was just so obvious from their behaviors that they didn't care about her at all. So I think they were after her for money and just information and just wanted to feel like they had dominance over her. And it was just one big, oh no. No. And there were even people that just got angry at us there was one woman who had been fired from the home because she was angry at the company for being hired to come in and take care of her. Because part of home health, especially in DC area, because you have to remember I had a security clearance for home health, which is actually higher than what people get for actual security clearances for intelligence, because we have to be trusted not to steal and not to lie and not to drug people or do anything weird. And the police and everybody else relied on us for information and for investigations and everything else. So they hated us. They hated my company and they really didn't like me. And it's probably one of the most important jobs I've ever taken, which is being with this woman and taking care of her. I did it for a long time, actually. It was probably one of my longest assignments. It was really hard to let go of her. But, it was really rewarding work. But it was very obvious that this girl was not her. I call her a girl. She's just mean. She'd show up on Christmas and yell at her. So abusive. So abusive. Clearly an elderly person who'd had a brain tumor removed that was being abused. And her former doctor was somebody that turned out to be really sketchy and needed to have her license taken away as well. So I just hated that because I just thought, oh, right now she's got the sketchy doctor too, who's completely corrupt and gross. And it just made me sick. But I have to wonder, if you looked into Hunter Biden's story and background, would you find out if he was even really related to the Bidens in the end? Or was he just somebody who came in and took advantage of Joe Biden's, health problems and neurocognitive degeneration? Because it happens a lot more often than people realize. And I myself, being a healthy minded person, struggled, especially in DC area, because I want Cersei and Wilhelm to go away, and they clearly were not related to me. And I would want to openly say they weren't related, and it lead to like fist fights, and I mean actual open fights in the streets with them attacking other people who were trying to get me away. And it just became this huge, like, I wouldn't say a fiasco, but some of the fights really were nasty. And they were clearly not related to me. You can't say, well, these people are kind of white and you're like kind of white, so they're all related. Like, not. Just not. And to this day, I'm very uncomfortable around anybody who wants to start calling everybody else their family. Because I'm just going to be like, wait, what? You saying who's your family? No, not your family. Be careful of people that use that phrase too easily. Like, even now, I notice when I'm in groups and somebody says that, everybody else will kind of look at them like, is this person for real? Do we have to worry about them using that term? Like, what are they going to ask for next? How weird is this going to get? So, the more you know, right? Anyways, but I have to note this because the woman that was so predatory towards her, my former client, also knew the woman over at the State Department, who I'm going to name Moo Cow. She's going to be called Moo Cow from now on. And the reason she's going to be called that is because she was responsible for the death of a U.S. ambassador in Africa, and she actually turned out to be part of the Wagner Group. I know her in my early 20s, but she was somebody who, in trying to get through investigations, had actually preyed on my mom. She was related to a whole other network of people. She knows Dan. She knows Cersei and Wilhelm. Definitely from the U.S., definitely from North Carolina, very much part of the Wagner Group. Very much, I wouldn't call her KGB, but she definitely got herself a job at the State Department, did it for years, and she was responsible for a whole bunch of illegal, unsolicited attacks on U.S. citizens in the D.C. area because she was so desperate to continue to set up these networks of torturing and abusing and even slaughtering women, trying to force people to be raped and beaten, and really obsessed with having people raped, by the way, and, using signals intelligence systems illegally, clearly working for Russia, and she's still free in the U.S. and married and trying to pose as somebody who has a decent life. Like, I'm just tired of it. She didn't have a right to have a job, and she certainly doesn't have a right to have money. In this country? No. I think she went down to Florida now. But really, firing her isn't enough. Somebody who's done that, literally broken in and hit U.S. citizens, like did a big pulse attack on Arlington, and all you guys can say is, oh, well, we're not fired. What? No. That's somebody who's got to be put in prison. So tired of this. No, if there's anything I got out of my times in the DC area, especially my frustration with some of the government employees that are so deliberately obstinate and, is love, what, and repeating everything all the time, and just rudeness and, obfuscation and false, saying stupid things like, well, you knew this one person who does this, so that must be you. No, I don't. I'm not guilty of anything just because some weirdo was following me around or somebody inched their way into my life when I was in my early 20s, and I clearly got rid of them. Because when I got divorced, I got rid of her. She was tied in with some people I really did not like. I was like, get to stepping, get going. And all of these people have been warned that the U.S. policies were going to be changing and that these investigations were going to go on and that there was going to be actual journalists around who were really going to do real stories again, that their hegemony that they'd created in bizarre society was not going to continue to exist here in the U.S. And they were told to leave. And frankly, Russia comes over pretty often with airplanes and picks up their people and takes them home. So they were all warned. I said, hey, you know what? You don't like the changes? Get in the airplane and go home. And they just go, Well, then you get what you get. Because what's going on right now is going to keep right on going. And the U.S. has help. I've realized that we don't survive just because of the way our government is structured. I mean, thank God we have a country with multi-dimensional levels of government. So you have federal government, you have state government, you have county government, you have city government, all the way down the line. What was one thing that Anne, nickname her Anne, the woman who ended up going to prison, who was one of the worst spies in U.S. history that betrayed both the FBI and the DIA, used to want was more government. She didn't understand we already had tons of government. The U.S. has tons. We have tons of multi-layered government. That's why it's so hard for some of these other countries to take us over, even though the way we handle things, especially in our capital area, isn't that great. But, the U.S. government is not centralized to the D.C. area. The federal government is not centralized to there. And we have government at all levels. And as you might have learned by somebody like Blackwell, if you lived in the D.C. area, is he said all politics is local. And it's because all government is local. Everything goes down to the smallest levels in the U.S. And it's what keeps us from being taken over, even though we're a rather large country. And yet we still have to get help from countries like Australia. We still need the help of the English. We still, we actually started relying more and more on Indian contractors who had some values and morals to do IT work around security for us after 9/11. We still have had to work with other countries. And most of them coming out of the Commonwealth, though. We'd really be nowhere without some of them. And I hate to say that. I love to think of the U.S. as a strong, stalwart country that's just like really on it, but we've had some serious struggles with Russia and China. Let me show you something. Yeah, it's August. I still keep this out. It's my little America unicorn. I still keep it out. It's August. I'll probably keep it there until like fall officially gets started. But it's just like I love my country, but there's just no getting around the fact that what happened in my life, what happened in my mother's life, what happened in my dad's, and the people I've known had to do with some weaknesses, and the fact that we really have had problems with, it's not a joke that the Russians were literally running submarines right up the Mississippi River, and that they docked themselves right in Iowa. And Illinois and Wisconsin were like, no, 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 you don't dock over here. But Iowa took them. Missouri is a mess. St. Louis, Missouri, Kansas City, Missouri is the seat of Russian mafia in the U.S. And Cersei is from there. Don't go to Missouri. Ugh. I mean, everything that, Mark Twain ever wrote was really about addressing that issue. And as he put in his works, he couldn't go very deeply into it because of how bad things were. And that was a really long time ago. Like, it's kind of hard to deal with. And then there were all these weird movements to get rid of his books in the schools because the Russia didn't want people to read about it. CCB doesn't want you to read about it. They don't want you to be aware of how long the issue's been going on. You rely on people like me and other friends that I've had who went to the D.C. area, like U.S. citizens, going, hey, they're docking submarines in Dubuque, help! So, and you still got the agency out in Hollywood today. And they're whack job cover movies and just stuff. I think I have like 5 friends on Facebook and all my social media who actually bother to see any movies this summer. I think most of us are just too busy and too over it. And who has the money anyways for this stuff? So it's annoying. But now that I got that out of my system. And I want to note something else. I'm going to change topics here. So come with me. There's a child that I actually worked with some who I had to leave behind. I managed to get a protective order for myself as late as 2019. I included him in it. He was dealing with abuse, really massive psychological abuse and potential trafficking, and I was not able to get him out. And the state of Virginia did not help me at all or pay any attention to his needs. I've done everything I can. So if there's somebody watching this who knows who that kid is, he needs help. He's not happy with the people who are supposed to be his parents, and he doesn't want to live with them, is what he told me. And I saw enough to know that he's really being abused. So I don't just do this show for me or to gratify my ego. There's actual people that need help. Anyways. I just want to note for you, there were some things that happened. One, let's talk about a cultural technology issue. What is this thing with coming down on AI now? Because there's been years, like I had problems with getting stolen from through IA issues in the 2000s, but now there's been this sort of counter effect of AI products being used to actually help people after all that. And now there's been a crackdown on it, like, oh, you can't use AI. That sounds very Russian. And I say that because the Russians use a lot of AI to steal from people, especially for some of these front groups out in Hollywood. But I'm just letting you know that there's some AI projects now that are actually used to help people with disabilities or to help people who, don't have the money to do like expensive business projects. They can use AI to accomplish that. So it's like not all AI is bad. It's not bad. I'm burping. Sorry. Drinking my Coke. I had some Coke Zero today. So I just want to get that across. It's not all bad. Like, don't hate the technology. Hate the weirdos messing with it, okay? Anyways. One thing we need to note is that on Wednesday this week, this is from England, the King of England took Prince Harry's royal title from him and from Meghan Markle. So they've been stripped of their official titles. They are no longer, this was on Sky News. And it was also listed in The Independent and in Cosmopolitan magazine. out of the U.S. And they are now, they're not going to be called His Royal Highness or Her Royal Highness anymore. They will just simply be the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. That's a huge blow. They're no longer considered royal, is the point. They're just not taking the titles away because they actually do have those land titles. They don't have the title of royalty anymore. And then importantly, to notice today, and that was Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, just in case anyone's confused. Now, today, this morning, the English announced that the king has now decided to go ahead, this King Charles has decided to go ahead and give the title, a new title to Prince William and his wife, Princess Kate. And I'm going to try to get this right, but Prince William will now be called he's now the Collector-in-Chief of the Mercian Regiment. That can't be right. The Army Air Corps and Royal Air Commodore, and Kate is Commodore-in-Chief of Fleet Air and Colonel-in-Chief of the 1st Queen's Dragoon Guards. And I'm sure I didn't read that quite right. Collector-in-Chief. Hold on a second. I'm not getting his title right there. It's all over the place. It was out this morning. But that's kind of a big deal because what they're saying is that, so I'm just looking for the title to get it right. So, Prince Catherine is now officially Commodore-in-Chief of the Fleet Air Arm, Colonel-in-Chief of the 1st Queen's Dragoon Guards, and Royal Honorary Air Commodore of Royal Air Force, Coningsby. And that title goes specifically to the fact that her grandfather was Captain Peter Milton and served in the Royal Air Force. And then, and their roles have been expanded. And okay, so it's Colonel-in-Chief for Prince William, the Mercian Regiment, Colonel-in-Chief, the Army Air Corps, and Royal Honorary Air Commodore, RAF Valley. That's a mouthful. So I'm sorry if I didn't get those right with my scribbling this morning, but I've had other things to do. I have a life, so as much as I can get done. Most people don't put this much into a show and densely pack it. We're at 22 minutes, so I'm going to have to get going pretty soon. But, and I want to note that there's a lot of really good employees that work for the government all over the country. And you especially note that when you think about all the different levels of government that I've talked to. I'm going to swivel back to the topic for you. It's really a DC area issue and an issue of corruption there with people that are just totally obsessed. And a lot of them are Russian or of Russian ancestry. And I hate to say it lines up that way, but it does. And there's just too many government assets and they're too disgusting and weird. And you know, the rape rings and the abuse of women there is just way too disgusting. And children. They don't care about kids at all. And I just don't know what to say about people that are that uncaring and just want to be paid off. And, you know, I was at Georgetown University trying to get my nursing degree and dealing with professors who were angry at me because I didn't want to work for free for a bunch of, you know, JLo needs more free material and all these other people. No, I didn't know it in the first place. And I'm actually owed a whole bunch of money for all this work. Big old bill hasn't been paid. Notably, I'm going to go to pop topics now. So I can swivel into that. But the Made in America tour or concert was supposed to be performed in Philadelphia for Labor Day weekend 2023 has now been canceled. It is being run by, that's from Rockefeller. It was Jay-Z's decision to cancel it. And that tour performance included Ice Spice, Lotto, someone called Miguel Cosacera or something, Metro Boomin and Coco Jones, whatever. That show would have actually had Lizzo as a major performer, and then Lotto would have also be there. Lizzo is of Russian heritage. She's not actually just a black woman. She's not an African-American woman. She might even be one of these people that, I mean, I've seen individuals that were literally like half Armenian and like half Russian. And like Kendrick literally threw an afro wig on a guy once who was like that and had him star in a video as a dancer. And he was supposed to be like the hot black guy. He wasn't black at all. He had no black ancestry. Wasn't African. I probably more African ancestry actually, being Sephardic, being partially Sephardic Jewish, more likely to be African than that guy was. You know, I'm also a lot of English and Northwestern French. I mean, it's just, you know, people of different backgrounds. But the point is that he definitely was not a black guy. And he didn't belong in hip-hop. I don't know what Jay-Z's going to do. I think the guy's been set up. I think some of the people I was dealing with were clearly Russian, and they were angry because they knew they were getting caught and things were going to end for them, and they started trying to set up people that were not Russian at all, just to try to make things difficult. But I'm not surprised at all. I totally believe Lizzo's backup dancers and anyone who worked for her says that she was mean to them. You know, a lot of her work, she got a huge amount from me, for the people that were trafficking me, and they were Russian. That's how I know that she's working with them, and that's how I know she is, because they were giving all the material to people of Russian ancestry and part of the Russian mafia. So basically, you're looking at more Kansas City, Missouri mafia, Russian mafia. And there's no point in them doing a show. Same thing with Lotto. Extremely aggressive aunt, had a job temporarily at the State Department, eventually got fired, but she was more than happy to steal from everybody. And the attitude in town was just, oh, you know, yeah, she stole, yeah, she stole. No, honey, it's really not okay for someone to work at the State Department or to try to pose as an employee in Arlington County and assault and beat people to get free material for a terrible performer who is actually racist and of Russian ancestry herself, and who was really disrespectful to the African American community in the U.S. And yeah, she was one of these weirdos that like to get gross and like masturbate in front of people and be really disgusting. And I'm just telling you that because you understand some of those behaviors are actually tactics to get into fights and to offend people and just to be weird and to cause a lack of faith and trust in the U.S. government. And it's important to understand that there really are weirdos and assets all over the place that misbehave, especially in that area. So, anyways, I don't think anyone's gonna miss that show. Other as just a side note, like cancel all the concerts, get rid of the weirdos, clean out the industry. Like, we'll be around or not, because what's happening is for a lot of people like myself, we've just gotten tired of the industry and we don't care. You know, if you're like me, I'm a creative, so I can create for myself all day. I can sing to myself. In fact, I'm making my own music and playing it for myself. Ha ha ha. Anyways, now I'm going to finish out with a song, Starboy, which was originally performed by The Weeknd. I do need to tell you that I actually wrote a bunch of his music and didn't get paid for it, so he's probably another one. Also kind of sounds a little too much like me. In fact, his whole voice might actually be me, because there's way too many of them that are just lip syncing with recorded voices from other people. So now you know. Whatever. He's also talking about leaving the industry altogether, which is probably a good idea at this point. Trying to put you in the worst mood, P1 cleaner than your church shoes, Millie point just to hurt you, all red leather just to tease you, none of these toys unleashed you, made your whole year on a week too, yeah. Main man out of your league too, sad woman out of your league too, house so empty, need a centerpiece. 20 racks of table cut from ebony. Cut that ivory into skinny pieces. Then she cleaned it with the face metal of my baby. Talking money, need a hearing aid. Talking about me, I don't see the shade. Switch up my style, I take any lane. Switch up my cup, I kill any pain. Look what you done. I'm a motherfucking star boy. Look what you done. I'm a motherfucking star boy. Every day a man try to test me. Every day a man try to end me. Pull off in the Roser SUV. Pockets everywhere getting nifty. Coming for the king, that's a far cry. Come alive in the fall time. No competition, I don't really listen. I'm in the blue moon scene, bumping new edition. House so empty, I need a centerpiece. 20 racks of table cut from ebony. Cut that ivory into skinny pieces. Then she cleaned it with the face when I love my baby, yeah. Talking money, need a hearing aid. Talking about me, I don't see the shade. Switch up my style, I take any lane. I switch up my cup, I kill any pain. Look what you done. I'm a motherfucking star boy. Look what you done. I'm a motherfucking star boy. Let a man, Brad Pitt, legend of the fall, took the year like a bandit. Bought mama a crib and a brand new wagon, and she at the grocery store looking lavish. Star Trek roof and the Wrath of Khan, and girls get loose when they hear the song. 100 on the dash, get me close to God. We don't pray for love, we just pray for cars. House so empty, need a centerpiece. 20 racks a table cut from ebony. Cut that ivory into skinny pieces. Then she cleaned it with the face when I love my baby, yeah. Talking money, need a hearing aid. Talking about me, I don't see the shade. Switch up my style, I take any lane. Switch up my cup, I kill any pain. Look what you've done. I'm a motherfucking sound boy. Look what you've done. I'm a motherfucking sound boy. Look what you've done. I'm a motherfucking star boy. Look what you've done. I'm a motherfucking star boy. And that was the Starboy. No, I'm just kidding. Anyways, sorry. Let's just finish up this show really quickly here. I'm just gonna say something today I saw in the store. I need to talk about this for a minute. What is up with Lauren Sanchez and Jeff Bezos? Because Lauren, I told you what my experiences were vaguely with her tangentially. I met her like once or twice. She's just awful. And I don't know anyone who even know her, and I wouldn't if I hadn't run into her when I was out in LA, and she was just so gross. And now she's with Bezos, and they're just the creepiest, sketchiest couple. And Bezos has this ex-wife who's so like legit, and it's weird. And then I'm in line and I'm listening to this older lady who's blind and has a walker, and she's talking about how her accounts have been cleaned out again by Amazon. So apparently Amazon's making money off of just these weird subscriptions to people. And I know Bezos is supposed to be out of the company, but is he? And why? This has happened before. I remember because I kept cutting off my Amazon Prime membership and just got rid of Amazon altogether because there was some really bizarre stuff. If you weren't like really on it, like they get a hold of that card number and they're just like, gang, 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 take that money out of there. Really sketchy banking practices with members' cards. I don't do anything with Amazon anymore. Nope. Not at all. And the last thing I needed was it's too sad when I see a blind woman in the store talking about her account's been cleaned out again, and she's like struggling today because of it. So, just an FYI. This was a thought project, just so you know. Have a good day.